Hello, and welcome to the 0th episode of the Redstone Engineering series. I'm making this video after recording some of the videos for the series because I realized I didn't actually explain how some of the components worked on a higher level, so that's exactly what this video aims to do. I'm going to talk about each individual component and what they kind of do without really getting into the details because that's what we'll talk about later in the series. So with that, let's jump right in. Alright, so the first component that I'm going to go over is Redstone Dust. Now, Redstone Dust is probably the first thing that you think of when you think of redstone. So what it does is it carries a redstone signal by basically reducing the signal strength each block it travels. So if we put, say, a torch here, it goes at the maximum signal strength of 15, and it'll reduce it by 1 every block it travels, so 14, 13, 12, so on and so forth, until it gets to 1, and then it goes to 0, which is off. And the off is clearly not going to power anything else. And what it can do is it can also power blocks that it points immediately into, but it doesn't power blocks that's adjacent to, but it doesn't point into. However, it powers the block that it's on top of. So if you bring this up, it'll actually power this lamp because this block is powered. So the next component I want to talk about is the Redstone Torch. The Redstone Torch can do a number of things. The first is that it acts as a redstone source, meaning that it itself is a powered block and it can power redstone components that are next to it, and it'll input a signal strength of 15 if it matters, which is usually just with redstone dust and comparators. It'll also power redstone components next to it, but it doesn't power blocks that are next to it because a powered block doesn't power blocks that are next to it that aren't a component. However, it will power a block if the tip points into it. So this block is not powered, but this block would be powered. Now, the next thing that it can do is it can invert a signal. So if this signal is off, then this is still on. And if this turns on, then this will turn off. And it has to be powering the block the torch is on in order to invert it. So the next component I want to talk about is the repeater. The repeater can do a number of things, and they're all really useful when they are required. So the most notable thing that a repeater does is it repeats a signal. So if we take a signal strength of 1, if we just put redstone dust next to it, it'll turn off and nothing will happen when we try to power anything off of this block. But what we can do is you can put a repeater here and refresh the signal to a signal strength of 15. This is probably the most useful thing, but it also has other uses. The other one is the fact that it can delay. So right now it's on a 1-tick delay. So if we put a torch here, we can see that the output is slightly delayed. And you can adjust it to 2-tick, 3-tick, and 4-tick. And you can chain them together to get then 5-tick, 6-tick, 7-tick, 8-tick, so on and so forth. The next component I want to talk about is the comparator. The comparators have a full dedicated video to them, so we're not going to get too detailed here, but all you need to know is that when it's in compare mode, which is when the front torch is off, then it will first take the largest side signal strength. So in this situation, it'll use this signal strength. And if the rear is greater than or equal to the side signal strength, so right now they're both 15, it will output the rear signal strength, which is again 15. But if we bring this back, then it is no longer greater than or equal to, it's less than, and it'll output off. In subtract mode, which is when this torch is on, it will take the largest side signal strength again, so in this case this one, and it will subtract it from the rear signal strength. So right now it's taking 15 from 14, so it's going to output 0 because it's not going to have a negative signal strength. But if we take this and we go 3 blocks out instead of 2, it'll give us a signal strength of 1 in the front. Now, it can also read from containers, right? So if we have a hopper here, and actually, you can have a hopper here, or you can have a hopper here with an opaque block in between. It will give you a linear signal strength based on how much stuff is in the container. So right now it's off. This has 5 slots, so if we fill it 1/5 of the way, it'll give us 1/5 of the way to a signal strength of 15, which in this case is 3, right? Because 3 times 5 slots would give us a signal strength of 15. This happens with all containers, and it depends on how many slots the container has and how large the slots actually are. The next component is the Redstone Block. Like the Redstone Torch, the Redstone Block is a source, so it can power redstone components that are next to it, including on top of it and below it. However, unlike the torch, it doesn't require any block to be on top of, so you can move it around at will and you can put it floating up in the air. And it will also power 6 blocks rather than just 5 like the torch would. Redstone blocks can also be pushed by pistons, which is usually what they're used for. Next are pistons. Pistons will have videos later down in the series, but basically what they do is they push blocks. So the non-sticky piston will push a block and it will leave it there. So it comes back and it will just leave it there. Whereas a sticky piston will push it up and then it will come back. Now, in Java Edition, if you actually give a sticky piston a 1-tick pulse, it'll leave the block there, and then likewise, it'll come back and grab it. This does not work in Bedrock Edition, but that is something that is useful in Java Edition. Next are slime and honey blocks, which do usually count as a redstone component. Slime and honey blocks are primarily used to push multiple blocks at once with one piston. So this design right here, the slime block is immediately touching the piston, and then that slime block is touching 3 other blocks, and we can push and pull those 3 blocks along with a slime block with just one piston. Likewise with honey, the honey does the same thing. And the honey and slime aren't fully interchangeable, but we'll get to that later in the series. The next components are the powering components. So pressure plates will power both themselves and the block that they're on top of, powering both of these redstone dusts. And wooden pressure plates will get powered by any entity, including mobs and item entities. Stone pressure plates will only get powered by mobs, but not other entities that are not mobs. Light pressure plates, which is this gold one right here, will get powered by entities, but it will add a signal strength every time another entity goes on top of it. And a heavy pressure plate here will do the same thing, but instead of adding a signal strength every 1 entity, it's every 10. Now, the stone button will be on for 10 ticks, a wood button will be on for 15 ticks, and a lever will be on indefinitely until you turn it off. The daylight sensor acts as a redstone source, and it only turns on when it's either daytime or nighttime. So right now, it's on when it's daytime. If you right-click it, it'll be on when it's nighttime. Unlike other redstone sources, it actually doesn't power the block under it. It only powers itself. And it will also not go from either an off or on signal. It will slowly creep the signal strength up. So during a sunset and a sunrise, the signal strength will change, which can be useful if you're trying to read something with like comparators or if you need to adjust exactly when something turns on. The next component is the observer. The observer will power the block immediately behind it with the redstone right here when the block in front of it changes, basically. There's a lot of different reasons why an observer would update, but usually it's just when the block changes. So like placing a block, removing a block. Funny enough, when the block itself actually changes, so if you push the observer, the block that's in front of the observer still changes. Things also like crops and pistons in front of the observer will also update it. Java Edition and Bedrock Edition have a lot of different details that go into that, but mainly they do the same thing. The next component is the target. The target will output a redstone signal when hit by any projectile, such as like potions, arrows, eggs, whatever. And it will make the signal stronger the closer to the middle is. If I go here, the signal strength is like 4 or something. But if I go right into the middle, then it's at 15. Something that targets also have is the fact that it can redirect redstone into it without like needing to go like this, for example. You can go right here and it'll redirect this redstone, meaning they can put components here and not have them get powered. And then you can grab the signal like here, so it can make for really compact circuits. This feature only works in Java Edition, so if it's in Bedrock Edition, you don't have this, but this can be useful if you're trying to compact things down. Now, one of the more obscure redstone components is the Lectern. The Lectern, when read by a comparator, will give you the state that a book is on. So, right now there's no book on the Lectern, so it gives you signal strength of off. When you put a book on it, and it's in page 1, it'll give you signal strength of 1. And when the book is on the last page, it'll give you signal strength of 15, and it will linearly interpolate all of the pages to the signal strengths until the last page is a signal strength of 15. So this book only has 2 pages. So the second we go to the last page, which is page 2, it'll give us a signal strength of 15. But if we say had 15 pages, then it would go up by 1 signal strength every time we turn a page. Another really obscure redstone component is the item frame. When read by a comparator, the comparator will give you the item's rotation. So the initial rotation gives a signal strength of 1, and it increases by signal strength every time you rotate it until it goes back to 1. Up next are droppers and dispensers. Droppers and dispensers will activate when they get powered, and in order to activate them again, you need to unpower them and then power them again. So like for example, we can activate it, and in order to activate it again, we need to unpower it, and then we can power it again. Dispensers have unique interactions with a lot of different items, such as like arrows, potions, eggs, snowballs, whatever. And it usually tries to throw a projectile and whatever it would do if you right clicked it. But also, it has unique interactions with, say, like boats. It has unique interactions with shulker boxes, with armor stands, whatever. Whereas droppers will always drop it as an item. So we have arrows in all of these. So this dispenser shoots the arrow as a projectile, whereas the dropper will just drop it on the ground as an entity. Droppers will also push items into a container if they're facing the container and they get powered. So we have 64 gold blocks here, we power it, and it will push an item into the chest. TNT will turn from a block into an entity when it's powered, and it will blow up shortly after. So hoppers have a few different characteristics. One is that they'll pull item entities from the top of it and put them into its container. Another is that they will push items that are in its container into another container that it faces into. So for example, it'll push the item into this chest. It's a container itself, of course, so you can be read by a comparator. And if we give a redstone signal to it, it'll disable the hopper, meaning that it can't pull items in from the top, and it can't push items into the containers that it might be facing into. Up next are the redstone powered rails. So first is the power rail, which will make minecarts go really quickly if it's powered, and they'll slow down and not move if they're unpowered. Detector rails, where when a minecart's on top, it'll power the redstone. And activator rails, when powered, will activate whatever might be into the minecart, including shaking an entity out of it. Doors all switch their state when given a redstone signal. So the door is closed, the door is open, the trapdoor is closed, the trapdoor is open, the gate is closed, the gate is open. Note blocks will play the note that they're on when they're powered, so we can power this as many times as we want and it won't change the pitch. We can also, of course, change the thing below it and have it change the sound. You can adjust it, and then you can play the same note over and over again. Redstone lamps will turn on when you give them a redstone signal, and this goes for any form of powering, so you can actually put redstone dust on top of it and power it that way, which is oftentimes really useful if you're making it for like a ceiling or something. Alright, that will be it for this introductory video. I didn't go over some of the really obscure redstone components, such as like beehives and jukeboxes, because if we use them, they're going to be in their own dedicated video anyways. I hope you found something of value in this video, and I will see you next time.